This is the Dahiya, the southern suburb of Beirut. I was here just a few days after the 2006 summer war. It was a scene of total destruction. Rubble was everywhere.
The infrastructure shattered, cars blackened by the intense heat. 20-story buildings reduced to piles of concrete and twisted metal. People who had fled Beirut as the bombs began to fall came back to find their homes in ruins. One of them was Nasri Hijazi. The apartment he had shared with his wife and 5 children had been literally torn apart.
This was our home. The worst damage is at the back, where the children's rooms are. Half of them are on the ground now.
He had pulled a few prized possessions from the dense rubble, his youngest daughter's toys, and what remained of the family photo album.
I feel like I have recovered something truly valuable, more valuable than the house itself.
Nasri's apartment was struck because he had the misfortune to live in the same area as the Hezbollah elite, who the Israeli military were determined to wipe out. In the immediate aftermath of the war, a representative of Hezbollah's Reconstruction project showed me around the area.
Here there were the office of the leadership of Hezbollah, about 6 buildings that returned to Hezbollah. But the number of buildings that have been destroyed in this place, about 60.
Hezbollah banners left people in no doubt as to who was responsible for the damage. The posters were in English, more for the benefit of the international media than the local population. Even at the height of the war, as Israeli jets screamed overhead, the printing presses were rolling, preparing to celebrate what Hezbollah called the divine victory.
This victory is not only for Hezbollah, it's for all Lebanon and for all Muslims and for all Arabs all over the world. I think what happened, this is the first time since the creation of this Zionist state, this is the first time somebody wins.
But this win had come at great cost. Hezbollah had pledged to compensate the victims of the war for the losses they had suffered. Nasri had come to Hezbollah's temporary offices in a local school to collect the $12,000 promised by the party's leader, Hassan Nasrallah. Nasri stressed that he was not a member of Hezbollah, but perhaps, inevitably, the war had drawn him closer to the party.
They proved that they are well organized, perhaps even better organized than the government. The government is still not acting and hasn't even managed to count all the victims yet.
The war, which had aimed to destroy Hezbollah, had instead left the people dependent on its organization and its ability to bring immediate aid to the survivors. The government, in contrast, was left struggling with the devastating economic consequences of the month-long war and even longer blockade of its trade routes. On the streets, the task of clearing the rubble had begun in earnest.
We believe that God, who helped us in the conflict with Israel, will help us to reconstruct this area and these places, inshallah.
I have returned a year later to find a very different Beirut. The rubble has been cleared and the slow process of reconstruction has begun.
Haj Nasri.
I met Nasri at the temporary accommodation he is renting with the money given to him by Hezbollah.
These are my daughters. This is my youngest, the one I told you about, whose toys I found.
What happened to your doll?
Nasri said the last year had been a hard one for the family. He still blames the government for all the delays in the reconstruction process.
صحيح أن حزب الله مشكورا
We are grateful to Hezbollah for the $12,000 they gave us last year.
لولا هذا المبلغ
Without that, we would be on the streets.
كثير من العائلات رح تكون بالشارع.
The government haven't called us.
الدولة اللبنانية أو الحكومة
They haven't even tried to find out if we are alive or dead.
ما سألت نحن أصلا طيبين ولا ميتين يعني.
2 weeks ago, Nasri signed up for the WAD project, literally the promise, a Hezbollah initiative which offers people the chance to have their homes rebuilt now in return for agreeing to hand over the compensation they will receive from the government. They had even given him a simulated image of his future home.
We agreed because, like Hassan Nasrallah said, it is going to be better than it was before. For example, my home, and this isn't a promotion for Hezbollah, used to have 5 rooms, but now it will have 6.
The government is still losing ground to Hezbollah, but insists it is not abandoning people like Nasri Hijazi.
We are working and we know you can improve things. But I think one has to compare the case of Lebanon with other cases. In less than 12 months, to be able to do all this, it's quite an achievement. I'm not saying that people are not still suffering, because until you rebuild your house and you move into it, you're still homeless. Therefore, I feel the pain of the people and I understand it very well.
Before I left Beirut, I had agreed to meet Nasri one more time at the site of his old apartment and where the WAD had promised they would shortly be starting his new building. Faced with the empty space, he seemed less optimistic about the future.
It was a 10-story building and now it's on the ground. Is this really what the modern world offers us? I'm not a soldier. It wasn't a center of the resistance. We were all civilians. My heart is filled with sadness. But life goes on. And we have to look to the future.
The political problems in Beirut are unlikely to be resolved overnight, and for the survivors of the war, it may be years before their new homes are completed. In the south, the survivors face even greater challenges as they attempt to rebuild their lives.